Getting on a little bit early to make sure we've got good audio video. I need to pull this up on actual YouTube. Looks like we are live. Looks like I can see the comments. So we will get started in about 2 minutes. Signing on early. We're going to talk about Tyreek Hill. We're going to talk about and his injury. We're going to talk about Jelani Woods and his injury. We're going to talk about Jonathon Brooks and his injury and the ripple effects. We're also going to talk about Kamini Vidal and what I saw watching the tape on him from his debut in week 2. All that will start the show, and then as always, it's a audience-driven show. Feel free to put your questions and comments in the chat, and I will answer them in the order that they came in, and the show will end when we get through every last question and comment. Silent Warrior checking in, appreciate that. If I can get a thumbs up on a audio check, I would appreciate it from anybody that's signing on a little bit early. We'll get started in a minute or two. Once we hit the 9 o'clock hour, let everybody start to join. Prior to jumping on, I finished it with a minute to go before jumping on. I was watching the Browns-Vikings game to scout it for a write-up for a game report. Appreciate that. Keep matriculating about the audio. Perfect. Beautiful. I have only one question after watching the Vikings-Browns preseason week 2. How is D'Onta Foreman always barely on a roster in the preseason and always a backup and nobody cares? He looks so good. I can't believe and every time he gets into games in the season, usually due because somebody else, or not usually, always because somebody else got hurt, he gets pushed into the lineup, and he's productive and he looks great. Man, I was watching him in his debut for the Browns against the Vikings, and I mean, he looks as good as ever. And he was running, he wasn't even the starting, the Browns went with the second team, he wasn't even starting. Pierre Strong was the quote-unquote starter with the second team. So Foreman is like the number 4 running back there. It's strange if you consider Nick Chubb into the mix. So, but I'll be talking about what I saw on that game tape tomorrow. So, but for tonight, we've hit the 9 o'clock hour, so let's roll. And I will get to the bets that Silent Warrior is putting in. Mr. Driver, I will be talking more. I'll talk more about what I saw with the Foreman situation when we get to that. But let me hit on a couple news items to get us started. Then we'll get to your questions and comments. And most of the topics that I have, of a handful, is all injury related. That these have all of them but one has occurred today, so I just wanted to touch on them. And then we're going to finish with I'm going to talk about what I saw. I did a sneak preview of just watching Kimani Vidal's of the Chargers debut, a cut-up tape of just his work. Haven't watched the whole game yet, but I wanted to see how he did in his debut. I'll talk about that. Obviously, I'll also report out on it, longer form, during the week. But injury-wise, here's what I know on the latest injuries that happened today. Tyreek Hill has his hand in a cast and a wrap of some kind to protect his hand. He has some kind of hand injury. Of course, every time injuries are reported on football websites, it's a total freak out panic. It's like every player that goes down on the field, goes off on a cart, you start getting these ESPN alerts and at a fantasy site alerts. Such and such was taken off the field on a cart. It doesn't look good, and then you start to get into a panic, and then we find out a couple hours later they're like, oh, they're fine. So when I saw Tyreek Hill had his hand wrapped and had a hand injury when that report kind of hit out into the news, I panicked, for a moment because I got a lot of shares of Tyreek Hill. So, but then I calmed myself down and went, of course, the initial reporting is always going to be hysterical. But then I read down that Mike McDaniel wasn't going to address the injury today. He would talk about it tomorrow, and then I'm like, oh no, you got to be kidding me. I can't have Tyreek Hill be hurt before this season starts. So, but from what I know, from talking with someone who has some knowledge of the situation, we'll see if they're correct. The Tyreek injury is really nothing dire, nothing to worry about. They're just being precautious that he does have his hand is sore or hurt or something, but it's nothing broken, nothing like he's going to miss a half a season type of thing. Like he may miss half of this week, but obviously they're going to want to keep him protected. So what I know of the Tyreek situation is nothing to worry about. Something, I guess, to worry about for those in Dynasty that have been on this Jelani Woods journey with us for the last couple years. Jelani Woods now has a toe injury that's going to require surgery, and he's going to miss a ton of time. Probably misses the season, but he may have not even made the roster anyway. He's not having a great camp. But the news is Jelani hurt again, had hamstring issues as a rookie, missed camp time, ended up getting into the lineup and doing really well, flashed as a rookie. His follow-up season to that, hamstring injuries in both legs, missed the entire season, couldn't get back. Came back this year, had great OTAs, was the talk of the one of the talks of the Colts OTAs. The coach was impressed. It was the first time the new coach had actually seen him play since he had the dual hamstring issues the year before. So I have great momentum going into training camp, and he has not impressed in training camp. Troubles with drops. I don't know what other issues. You could tell where he was on the depth chart. You could tell where he was when he was being inserted into the preseason games. But now he has a toe injury. The coach is saying he's going to miss a serious amount of time. They'll probably either put him on IR or they'll just cut him outright. Our time with Jelani Woods in Dynasty is probably coming to an end. He was the hottest deep sleeper I saw coming out of OTAs in the dead of summer, and I was getting enthusiastic that yes, this was going to be the year, but it's definitely not going to be the year, and I don't know if it's ever going to be a year. We got too many other opportunities we can mess with. I don't want to go into a fourth year of holding on to Jelani, thinking that something magical is going to happen. The odds are that Jelani's career is pretty much snuffed out. This feels like this is the next. I don't want to deal with the next Donald Parham that I'm waiting several years on. I'm sure next year there'll be some good reports on Jelani. He may get cut and wind up on another team, and it gets me excited. I may put him on the end of a deep Dynasty roster just because I feel like I got some sunk costs into him, but I'm pretty much going to divorce myself from the Jelani Woods situation. Too many other opportunities. I don't want to hog up roster spots on Dynasty waiting on Jelani Woods to turn around. The Jonathon Brooks Carolina injury issue is still going on. Recovery is not necessarily on track. They're in no real need to push him because what are the Panthers going to make a playoff run? I mean, they should wait. And the fact that we see that they are waning, this is delayed from getting him back onto the field. There's no major push. They're not rushing him. He's not rushing back. You can tell there's no urgency, which is the prudent thing to do, especially considering how bad this team is. It started making me think about about the Jameson Williams injury his rookie year, coming off a late season the year before in college, ACL. Jameson Williams didn't even really start practicing, I think, till 4 to 6 weeks into the regular season. He was on the PUP list, if I remember it all correctly, and he had like 2 or 3 weeks worth of practices before they actually elevated him into a game. And then when he was in games, it was only for a couple of snaps, and pretty much and then from there he didn't really do much. I'm sure Jonathon Brooks, once he's good to go, he's probably going to get a decent workload, but this is shaping up to almost be a lost season, a waste of time of Jonathon Brooks for your fantasy team, especially in redraft or best ball. It's like he's not coming back until at least week 5. He's going to go on a 4-game pup, possible 6-game pup, possible 8-game pup, and then where's Carolina going to be after 6 weeks or 8 weeks? Will they even have a win? I mean, they may have one win. Their season's going to be over by the time Brooks is even thinking about getting back. So are they going to bring him back to a 1-7 team and push him 20 touches a game and wear him out? I mean, they might as well just redshirt him for the year at that point. So even when he comes back, I don't think we're getting any big boom from Jonathon Brooks being the main carry guy that they're going to drive into the ground with touches just coming back. On top of the fact that the Panthers are the worst team in the NFL, I mean, watching them in the preseason is unbelievable. You think they couldn't get any worse, but they are. So Jonathon Brooks is becoming a useless asset. He's going to be forgettable even when you take him in Dynasty and you're like, okay, I'll just wait a year. I'll wait till next year when he's the lead back. Well, I mean, what state of disarray will the Panthers be in a year from now? It's not the same. They've got the same owner, same coaching staff, same management structure. They may fire the GM. I don't know. But the thing that's driving the Panthers into the ground as an organization is still going to be there next year. Will Bryce Young still be there? I don't think so. I think Bryce Young will have his reckoning this year, and it'll be the Mac Jones story where they just ditch him from the team, pull him up like a weed, and throw him out and give up on him. That's now the new pattern with quarterbacks. You get like this, the high pick guys. You get 2 years. If you stink at 2 years, you're gone. Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, Kenny Pickett. The list goes on and on. Bryce Young's going to be the next one in that. So Jonathon Brooks, a wasted year this year, and then we don't even know what he's going into the next year. Like, is it a Devin Singletary situation where it's like, okay, you're a good enough back, but you're on you're in a bad situation, a bad O-line, a quarterback nobody respects. How are you going to put up massive numbers? You're going to put up some numbers because you're going to get the touches, but is it going to be worth a first round Dynasty draft pick. So I was never really into Jonathon Brooks that much, but the more this situation goes off the rails, I have no interest. I thought there was a window where he might be getting back to start the season, and Dave Canales has already given him the job. He doesn't have to earn it. He's just already given the job that he's going to be the starter. That's Canales was out saying that, which is ridiculous, but so is the whole entire Panthers organization. So I thought maybe if Brooks comes back early, they're going to give him all the touches. That's something worthwhile, even though I think Brooks he's fine, he's good, but he's not like, going to the Hall of Fame in the future or anything. But now this injury's taking longer. The Panthers look terrible in the preseason. Not that I expected them to look different, but when you actually get to see it, I'm like, how are they getting worse? Well, I mean, I can answer my own question. That's rhetorical, but to just see it, you're like, man, this is so bad. And then what am I going to expect Brooks to do when he gets in there? So he'll have some value, obviously, just like Chuba Hubbard has some value as being the all-touch guy on a bad team. But for what you have to pay for Jonathon Brooks in like a Dynasty rookie draft, man, I am not interested. To keep the injury train going with the Panthers, Deontay Johnson got hurt today. Don't know the extent of it. Some people are saying, it doesn't look good, but they think he's going to be okay, but it could be something where he's like misses a week or two. When I got that news, I couldn't have cared less about that news because Deontay Johnson, to me, hasn't been in existence for 2 years. He peaked 3 years ago. And he's in the same boat as Jonathon Brooks. Like, what's Deontay Johnson going to do with Bryce Young? What's he going to do with that Panthers offense? And Deontay Johnson hasn't been good for a couple of years now. He's an overpaid diva wide receiver who was more unique 3-4 years ago. Now he's not as unique. There's wide receivers flooding in from college that are better route runners and quicker off the snap. Deontay's well paid. He's not interested in getting touched. I see all these Panthers with all these injuries because I think they look around and they go, this team is terrible. Like, if I can miss some games and not be a part of this, that would be good. If I'm Deontay Johnson with all the millions that he's making and has made, like, why am I going to go try to get my head taken off working with Bryce Young? I mean, it's going to be a wasted year for Deontay Johnson, even if he's healthy and plays all 17 games. But to note from today's news, Deontay's hurt, and I bet he milks it and misses more time than they expect. Also, side note from Panthers camp, Jonathan Mingo continues to work ahead of Xavier Leggett. If Leggett ends up being a bust of a draft pick, I mean, this team is beyond the pale of how poorly run it is. So that tomorrow in my notes, I've written up some proposals, ways to bet the Panthers' demise for this year. Some of them obvious, some of them a little more unique or cute. So that'll be out tomorrow, because there's no way the Panthers are going to have anything close to a decent season. About the only chance that they'd have of getting 3, 4, 5 wins is if Bryce Young gets hurt right away and Andy Dalton takes over for the season. They might be in a little better place to get some wins if Dalton gets on a bit of a roll with Thielen and Deontay Johnson, and if Leggett's actually okay and is a decent player, then maybe. But if Bryce Young's going to be the starter, I think they're in huge trouble. And I think Andy Dalton may be out. He's hurt now. He may miss the first couple games of the season. So off the jump, Carolina's already going to fall flat. Last thing on my notes before I turn to the questions and comments. Kamini Vidal, I watched him debut. I watched all of his touches in his debut against the Rams. Just did a preview of it, of just his work. I haven't watched the whole game yet to file my report on it on fantasyfootballmetrics.com. But just to give a tease of what I saw, I didn't think it was too bad. I was expecting to feel neutral about it. I was a little worried it was going to be not that exciting because rookie running backs, when they debut, first ever time in the NFL, they can look pretty bad the first time out. Trey Benson looked terrible his first game. I thought Ray Davis did not look well his first opportunity. We have to give them that first game and get to their second and third game when they get their sea legs underneath them. So I wasn't holding. I'm kind of neutral on Vidal. You've seen the camp reports where he's running as like the fourth or fifth running back. They're questioning whether he's even going to make the team. But I would say from what I saw on his cut-up tape of just all of his snaps and touches, he's going to be the third best running back of that depth chart. And that's somewhat on the depth chart's fault because they've got terrible running backs down the line. But I thought Vidal looked good. He looked... The best I've seen of Vidal is when he was at the Senior Bowl. He's just a grinder running back that's tough with good instincts. He's not a game breaker. He's not a future superstar, but he's good. And maybe in the right situation, if he falls into the right situation, he could be good and really good for fantasy. The Chargers may offer some opportunity there because it's definitely going to be led by Gus, and then they definitely see it as Dobbins as a running back with Gus Edwards, which is fine, but the only player that gets hurt more than Jelani Woods is J.K. Dobbins. So, and Dobbins is already hurt again. Not seriously hurt, but he's hurt again. We still don't know if he's got the juice back to be a legit NFL running back. We remember him from years ago when he was up and coming and an RB1 future and all that. But we don't know what his new reality is. Our own Ross Jacobs would tell you through his research of Achilles injuries and then the running backs that as they come back from them, that he's already slammed the door shut on Dobbins, and he may. I'm not looking at the chat. I'm looking over the chat now. I'm not sure if Ross is out there that he can comment on it. But if Dobbins is not it, it's either Jarrett Patterson or it's Vidal, and from what I've seen, I would rather have Kamini Vidal taking the touches and keeping him on the roster before I would turn things over to Jarrett Patterson. Jarrett Patterson's fine, but he's old news. He's just solid too. He's maybe a more experienced version of Vidal, but Vidal's got a little bit more pep in his step. Isaiah Spiller is no good. Elijah Dotson, who I liked last year, doesn't look that good this year. Josh Kelly isn't there anymore. He's going to be about out of the league now. So if Dobbins goes down, it's Gus Edwards and somebody else, and that somebody else is looking more and more like it could be Vidal. I don't know. I haven't seen the national reports yet on what they're thinking. They were super hot on him before the preseason. And then when he was found to be running 15, number 5 running back, number 4 running back, the mainstream kind of started cooling on him. So I don't know what they thought about his work this week. He didn't do anything that was like amazing. He didn't have any mega numbers or anything, but I thought just watching him play, like, oh, that's the guy from the Senior Bowl that I thought could be a really handy running back. If he was on the 49ers, and if all the 49ers running backs were healthy, he probably doesn't even make the roster. He wouldn't make the Jets roster, most likely. I mean, he's not a superstar, but in the Chargers situation, it's like there's Gus Edwards, and if Dobbins snaps again, then all of a sudden it's Gus and Vidal, and then if Gus gets hurt, then all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, holy crap, I've got a starting running back that's getting a lot of touches, who I'm sure Harbaugh's going to say, this guy reminds me of Blake Corum. So I can see the potential here in the future now that I've actually seen him play and he didn't fall flat on his face, and knowing the rest of the competition, the stock rises for Vidal for me this week. So that was the news and notes. I am going to go to the chat, and I am going to take the questions and comments in the order that they came in. Feel free to continue to put them in. I will probably miss some comments that are time sensitive to what I'm talking about now, because there's so many questions and comments in front of it, but I'll try to connect the dots when we get there. Actually, let me try to expand this chat just so I can try to keep an eye on some of the comments coming in on what we're talking about currently. But okay, let's get to it. Starting at the top, I'm going down to Silent Warrior's first comment. Bet365 has a top 2 division finishing positions, and I did Kansas City, Denver in the AFC West for plus 500, and Washington Giants for plus 2,500 in the East. I like those bets. I have not. I'm going to write that Kansas City, Denver one down. And the Denver thing coming from our reporting today, or reporting last week, that, I mean, this Denver team, Bo Nix obviously grabs all the headlines, and that's great, and that's legit for him to do, but the rest of the team is playing amazing football, even down to the second team. So the Raiders aren't it. The Chargers could be it if this, but there could be issues if Herbert's back to practice. Looks like the plantar fasciitis has passed him, but the Chargers are no lock to be in second place. So I could see Denver now as the second best team in that division, plus 500 odds, with Kansas City as the obvious number one. That's a great bet. I love that. And then I've been talking about from a week ago or more about the Washington Giants bet to be the 1-2 in the NFC East. I bet it both ways. I bet it Washington Giants with the Cowboys in last. I bet it with Giants Washington 1-2 with Dallas in last place. I also bet Dallas as a hedge because the odds are so I won't say, I'm going to say astronomical, but they're, I mean, plus 2,500, plus 4,000, plus 5,000, whatever it is to get the exact order of all four. But when you put Washington and the Giants at the top of that, the odds are terrific. So I put a little bit of money on Washington Giants with Dallas in last, little bit on Giants with Washington, which is even bigger odds, with Dallas in last. So smaller bets with nice payouts, but I also put some money on Dallas to win the division, just straight up win the division, which I think is plus 200, somewhere in that range. I put a little bit on that, which goes up against my Dallas to finish last, but of the basket of all of those things, because I still think it's possible Dallas can win that division. Any of them can win that division. That's the beauty of the Washington Giants at the top bet for the odds that are given. But I took a position on Dallas just winning the division to cover my, if the Washington Giants thing doesn't pan out and Dallas doesn't finish in last, if they're having a better season and they actually finish in first, which I think is possible, then all the bets added up, the ones that I lost, if just one of them hits, I'm going to make a profit. So, but the key was putting a little bit on that Washington Giants Washington at the top, because it's a great, the odds just are begging to take a shot at it. And the reason why, if you haven't read the latest Giants report and all that, that Giants were not that bad in that game against Houston. It looked bad. Jones had the interception, so everything seems terrible. But they've really got a pretty frisky team outside of Daniel Jones. Now, I'm sure Daniel Jones is going to blow it. On one hand, I can say, why waste your money on that bet? I can say this to myself in the mirror, like, why are you going to waste money on this bet of the Giants when you know darn well that Daniel Jones is going to blow it? Then that's the devil on my shoulder says that. The angel comes along and says, Daniel Jones took the Giants to the playoff 2 years ago, so how bad could this really be? And this may be a better Giants team than that one 2 years ago that went to the playoffs. So that's where the Giants come into the picture, because of the odds, make it where you can put a little bit of money on and get a big payout. Daniel K is loving the Silent Warrior bets. I do too. Albert Driver, Evening RC, you actually hit on one of my questions. Is Foreman draftable? That is a great question. I just watched that game. I just watched his debut. I got to digest it. I thought for sure Jerome Ford would start with Dante Foreman as kind of like the co-starters. Like the Chubb and Hunt is going to be Ford and Foreman until Nick Chubb actually gets back. But in the preseason game week 2, where Foreman made his debut, I would have bet money that Foreman would have been. They said that Foreman was going to play, so I would just assume, okay, they're going with their second team, because like DTR was the starting quarterback. They're going with their. Sorry, I'm looking down at a notification. If I look down and pause in the middle of something, I am looking down to see if I'm getting any hot football news or some type of rumor or something. But it's usually a advertisement for something that makes me mad, because it distracts me. So where was I? Dante Foreman starting. If I would have seen Dante Foreman start the preseason game, which I would have bet that he would have, but he didn't. But had he, I would have thought, okay, the Browns are giving him respect. He's going to be the co-runner with Ford. Ford is better in the passing game. Foreman runs the style of running game that they like. You're going to get a couple of weeks of Dante Foreman in a split role until Nick Chubb comes back, whenever he comes back. But I just watched them play, and Pierre Strong started. That may not mean that that's the way it's going to go for week 1, but it froze me for a second of getting too cocky about, oh, hey, it's going to be a Foreman-Ford split, and Foreman's a bit of a sleeper in that, because he's just a great running back, and he just fits what Cleveland does, and Cleveland has an awesome offensive line. So I can see the path towards Foreman being something usable, useful, but I kind of tapped the brakes when I saw Pierre Strong actually start ahead of him in the preseason game. We'll see what next week brings, but the way that Foreman looked, the way that Strong looked, and the way that Foreman looked, like, there's no, I don't even know how Dante Foreman is the fourth running back, when you count Nick Chubb, on an NFL team. It's ridiculous. He could be starting for about probably 5 to 10 teams in the league right now, and he's the Browns' number 4, according to this past week's preseason game. So the talent is there, the situation is there, but I don't know what the Browns are doing when Pierre Strong works ahead of them. That's a slap in the face. If Foreman was a rookie, then I could see that they're not going to push the rookie in the preseason ahead of a veteran, perhaps. But Foreman being a veteran like that, and Pierre Strong starting over him in a preseason game, it's a slap in the face towards Foreman, or at least I perceive it that way. Silent Warrior, yeah, I can't believe Dallas didn't go after Foreman. I mean, why did Dallas go after Dante Foreman? Why didn't Dallas draft Braylon Allen? Why didn't 30 teams in the league draft Braylon Allen? I don't get it. You're getting me worked up now. Silent Warrior, what are your favorite mid-round running back targets from Eckler, Pollard, Gus, Zeke, Javonte, Zamir? I'll take it from, I always think in PPR terms, so I'll try to make it more half PPR to make it neutral on that type of stuff. So if I could have any one running, I'm going to take it like I'm drafting from these running backs. Zamir White would be number 1 because I know he is the unchallenged lead running back for an NFL team, and we saw a glimpse of what he could do last year with a bad O-line and with the same type of quarterback situation. Zamir was fairly impressive with his 4-game trial at the end of last year, and I was impressed with the way he was catching the ball out of the backfield. Alexander Madsen is one of the worst running backs in the NFL. He's not a challenge. Dylan Lobby is too far away. I don't even know if he's going to be the number 3 back come week 1, but he's more there for a passing game gimmick, where White is going to be for right or for wrong, and I have no idea what the Raiders are doing with their team. Starting Gardner Minshew over Aiden O'Connell, excuse me, to me is inexplicable. And I saw the reason why. I suspected the reason why was because the head coach, who's insane, was going to love Gardner Minshew's whole shtick of being really passionate and really into things and a good leader, where Aiden O'Connell's just kind of a quiet guy. Let me take a quick sip. I'm talking myself into a frenzy. So this coach, Antonio Pierce, already made a bad decision at quarterback. He's got a certain thing he's looking for. He's looking for a Minshew's mentality over Aiden O'Connell. Doesn't matter about the talent. It doesn't matter who played better. I think everybody, the observers, and what I saw in the preseason, Aiden O'Connell was better than Gardner Minshew. I think if everybody who observed that, from beat writers to analysts who watched the games, voted, everybody would have voted for Aiden O'Connell. That somehow Gardner Minshew was named the starter after a game where he was terrible. But it's because he's got that linebacker mentality at quarterback. Antonio Pierce is into your attitude, not about your talent. And that's what's going to cost him in the end. So, but with that explanation in place, he loves Zamir White for that very same reason. So Zamir White is his Nick Chubb. He's going to run it behind, he's going to run that offense behind Zamir White. So I want in on Zamir White. My second choice would probably be Gus Edwards, because I think he's going to get all of the touches, and J.K. Dobbins may fall off the face of the earth. and Vidal, if he gets up to it, he's not going to bump Gus Edwards. The offensive coordinator is tied to Gus Edwards. He won't allow anybody to take down Gus Edwards, and Vidal's not such a special talent that he's going to take him down. So I'm sure he'll play some snaps if it comes down to it, if Dobbins is out. But I could do Gus in the second spot. If it's PPR, I could go away from Gus and go with Tony Pollard just because I want in on that offense, and I think Pollard and Spears are both going to be nice in PPR out of that offense, but Pollard's going to be a step ahead. Pollard's probably going to be the lead runner and probably play a little more of the snaps in the split. So I could go Pollard PPR. I would definitely go Gus non-PPR. Then Zeke comes into the picture because I think he's going to get all the touches for Dallas, and I still think he's okay. So of the bad, let's call them bad, of the bad running backs who are going to get all the touches like Devin Singletary and Zeke, I'd rather go with Zeke, especially if it's half PPR or PPR, because Zeke will probably get 3, 4, 5 catches a game. I don't know that Singletary will, and I'm pretty sure Gus Edwards will not. Austin Eckler looks a lot better this year, but he's definitely in a split with Brian Robinson, so Eckler only enters the picture as PPR, but I'd rather have Pollard PPR than Eckler PPR at this stage. The one who's last on this list that I can confidently say is last on this list is Javonte, and you can read why in the Packers Denver report that I put out today. Okay, Sam Shen, RC, new member here. Awesome, appreciate that. I love your work so much. I appreciate that even more. Question on fantasy. For full PPR, 6 points, 6 bench spots, should I draft an extra backup quarterback on my bench? So that's not a deep league. So that question is kind of teed up for because there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks available on the waiver wire with that thin of a bench. So, but Sam, I've got 2 questions for you. So that before I answer that, because I just want to make sure I don't want to just fly off the cuff, because my initial reaction is no, because that's thin benches and you're going to want to probably take more shots at running back with your bench spots, and there's going to be a lot of churn of needing useful players, and the second quarterback's just going to sit there, and if you get to a problem with your starting quarterback, there's going to be a bunch of options on waivers in those type of leagues, is my perception. But answer me this so I can answer the question better. What is the quarterback scoring? Because if it's 4 points, then the quarterbacks mean a lot less. If it's 6 points and there's crazy bonuses and all that, like the quarterback is pretty valuable, then maybe there's a reason that I will get into of why you might use a roster spot on a second quarterback. And then how many teams in the league? Are we talking the typical 12? Or is this 16 or 32? Which all changes the game, or is it smaller? Is it a 10 or a 12, which changes the answer potentially? So, quarterback scoring and the total teams in the league. If you put that down, I'll pick it up here in a little bit. Silent Warrior, are you still confident in Seattle D as your last pick? Would you consider Tennessee instead with the juicy Caleb matchup? I would say this. Am I still confident in the Seattle D? Yes, but my dragging out of the letter Y on that yes probably tells you where I'm at. Yes, I'm confident, but I'm getting less confident every week that I see Bo Nix doing so well. And I know that, or I think I know that rookie quarterbacks, even the best of them, I mean, think back to like C.J. Stroud's debut. Joe Burrow's debut, they're in their very, very first game, it usually doesn't go very well, no matter how talented they are. And then they just start to blossom from there. So I have some confidence that once Bo Nix starts facing the real first team defense, and Mike McDonald as a head coach gives you some faith that they're gonna their defensive talent is, I would say, top half of the league. Whether they're top 10 or just top 15, I still can't determine yet. Still haven't seen them in action, but on paper this looks like it could be a top 10 or 12 defense, and we haven't seen this defense in action, and we haven't seen Bo Nix playing the real first team all the way through of an opponent. So I think all of those forces combined with a rookie debut that we're probably going to be fine. But the more Bo Nix looks so good, that could manifest itself that in his first game, he may not win it. His team may not score 21 points, but he's not going to turn. He doesn't look like he's going to turn it over. Caleb Williams is going to turn it over. Drake May, if he somehow gets a start, which I don't think he has a chance of, he will turn it over. A lot of the rookie starters will turn it over. I think even Jaden Daniels, I would bet, has a bad interception before Bo Nix does. So if I'm looking for turnovers, you might not get them in a Bo Nix start. So to your question about going after Caleb, that starts to make sense. If you're looking for turnovers and possible defensive touchdown scoring, that's where there's probably a higher probability. The thing about going up against Caleb is, and the thing with Caleb in general is, he like I put in the recent reports, from the pocket, he's a D grade quarterback. I know it, and I see so many football analysts so exuberant about what a special talent Caleb Williams is because of what they've seen in the first two preseason appearances. I looked at those same two preseason appearances, and I have 15 years of experience of watching these quarterbacks, and if you've been with me for a while, you know I get them right at a high level. I'm rarely faked out by quarterbacks. Once they start playing, I'm really good projecting them before they even play, but once I start seeing them play, I'm even better at scouting them. And I look at Caleb Williams working in the pocket, working most of his games in the first two preseason games, and I'm like, I would be scared to death if I was the Bears. I would be scared to death if I was a Bears fan. And yet I see all the analysts losing their minds about how great he is. He's terrible from the pocket. He is nothing like what Bo Nix looks like. He is nothing like what Jaden Daniels looks like. He's nothing like Michael Penix looks like from the pocket. Now, where Caleb Williams is an A-grade quarterback, I will contend, I will give, is that when he scrambles, when he drops back in the pocket and he panics because he can't see, he can't read the defense, everything's moving too fast for him. I can see it in his legs, and I can see it when his hand, he just starts tapping the ball like he's sending an SOS distress message from the 1920s. He's trying to send a Western Union message from 100 years ago. When he's in the pocket, he taps the ball so much, because when they do that, it's because they're nervous. They can't see what's going on. They're too afraid to pull the trigger, because if they throw it into the blindness and they throw an interception, that will be the worst thing in the world that ever happened. So they freeze up. And I saw it with Caleb Williams in college, and I see it in his first two preseason games. The difference of Caleb Williams is in college, he could get back in the pocket, look, and if it wasn't immediately there for him to throw to, he ran. He scooted out, and he didn't run forward quite as much. He's not a Jaden Day. He's not a runner, but he's very mobile. And what he likes to do, he doesn't like to run forward because he might get hit. So he's nervous in the pocket, and he's a nervous runner. But what he's really good at, and what he can run rings around people with in college, is running around in circles, going side to side, evading defensive linemen, and just kind of scrambling around. And then everything breaks down. And then once he's scrambled and he's away from the fray and he's on the move and he's looking down his section of the field, he sees receivers well, and he's got a great arm, and he can throw it. When he sees it, when he has time, or when he's scattered scrambling and everything's falling apart and he sees somebody has sprung open, which happens all the time with scrambling quarterbacks, it gives the receivers all kinds of opportunity to run zigzags and leave the cornerback in the dust because it's not a normal play. If Caleb sees it, he will find somebody and throw it to him and hit him. But you're not going to get that Caleb Williams every single play. They can't roll him right every play. They can't make him scramble every play. And when defensive coordinators get used to that, they're going to attack him from his right. They're going to keep him in the pocket, make him throw from the pocket, and he can't throw from the pocket, and he's going to be Jameis Winston with turnovers. That's coming, so he's a good to play against in week 1, but he's also got the opportunity that if he does scramble around in circles, he is going to burn a defense potentially. And there's also the potential that the defense, usually the defensive coordinators are about 3 weeks behind on reality. So they'll treat Caleb Williams like he's a great quarterback, and they may lay off of him and just let him sit back in the pocket with no pressure. Caleb Williams, or any quarterback with no pressure, can do things, even if that means he starts scrambling sideways to extend the play and make the defense break down. And then you're playing to his wheelhouse when he can scramble and extend the play and find something to throw to. So you might get Tennessee being dumb off the bat and letting him sit back there and do some things. But if they put good pressure on him from the sides, I'd attack him from the sides. I'd dare him to run up the middle, because he won't. Just have the defensive tackles push forward to add some pressure there, but wait, keep their eyes open. Don't try to get the sack. Try to find him when he's getting ready to leak out. If he tries to leak out, come from the sides, but don't come from the sides like morons that come full speed on the way outside, and then they get nudged away, and there's these big open gaps for Caleb to run through. Do a controlled pressure from the outsides, push the defensive tackles forward, and just crowd him in. Don't let him scramble left or right. Make him scramble up the middle, because he probably won't. He'll still try to scramble to the outside or left or right, and then run right into better athletic defensive linemen that can hunt him down. In last week's game, he had a couple great scramble plays when everything broke down and he went in circles and got away from everybody, but that was against third and fourth string defensive tackles and defensive linemen, guys that were the equivalent of what he was doing in the Pac-12. When he plays a first team, he could be in real trouble. But if they play him wrong at first, he might have a decent game. So I'm not saying it's a lock to go against Caleb Williams week 1, but I'm for going after Caleb week 1. Just like I'm for going after Bo Nix week 1, but it's starting to get a little nerve-wracking. So, long answer to that question. I think it's fine to go after Caleb. The thing about the Seattle play was we were going to get a 2-week run, if that's important to you. But I'm finding that to maybe be less important than just avoiding Bo Nix being super safe and not giving me a lot of opportunity. Maybe I'd rather go in to go against Caleb or go against the Patriots. But really, if you're not going to go Seattle because of the allure of is it Denver, New England that they get off the punch? I'm gonna look at it just so I'm not talking out of my rear end. Yeah, it's Denver, New England. So the potential of that this summer of being Nix's debut and then getting Drake May week 2, it looked fantastic. Now the Bo Nix part of that's starting to look a little shaky. So if you're into the 2-week thing, that's where I could kind of stick with going against Bo Nix. But if you're like, I don't care, I just need to get out to a great start, which I'm an advocate for. If you're going to go against somebody, you can go against Caleb. I think that's fine. But just go against Carolina. Take the Saints and go against Bryce Young. I mean, it's a layup. The Carolina Panthers are terrible. So that's a known. Caleb Williams could, with his feet, make things a little complicated. He could also I could see Tennessee getting 6 sacks in that game and Caleb having 2 or 3 turnovers and the bloom be off the rose fast. That Tennessee defense is flying around the field in the preseason. That's a totally transformed defense. So I like the Caleb opportunity, but I'm not totally shaken by the Bo Nix facing Bo Nix. But part of the Seattle allure is that you're getting New England the second week. If that doesn't mean anything to you, then and it shouldn't mean a lot, you can go against that. I think you've been wanting to go against Caleb all along, so I say go for it. Silent Warrior Sam, I usually do a backup quarterback, then fill the bench on a 6-player bench for what that's worth. Daniel K. Silent, how are you so confident in Redskins Giants finish top 2? I'll answer that question for him, but he may answer that. Well, we'll get to that when he answers it. Tom Finn 2018 traded Jelani for 212, which became Penix. Fantastic, good for you. I wish I would have been trading Jelani off the OTA news this summer, but I was a Jelani believer. OTAs went so well. Indianapolis has terrible tight ends. This story was going to write itself, and I still think Jelani would have come out of this, even though he wasn't having a great training camp per se. Watching him in the games, he was blocking well. The other tight ends are not great, so I could see Jelani rising fast. But now this toe injury just kind of takes all the wind out of my sails on Jelani. Silent Warrior, playing the long shot since Dallas and Philly are on the decline, 2 worst coaches in the division. There's that aspect of it. I would say that the gap between Dallas and Philly at the top and Washington and the Giants at the bottom is shrinking fast. Washington got a lot better, and they obviously have a better quarterback. They have a better coach by virtue of it not being Ron Rivera. They had a great draft. That's a good team. That's what Washington is. Washington can get to 8 or 9 wins. It wasn't but 2 years ago that the Giants were getting to 8 and 9 wins. They may have even had 10 wins that season that they went to, were a wild card and won a playoff game. Daniel Jones won a playoff game. So the gap, I agree with Silent Warrior, the gap between these two, the power 2 and the lowly 2, that gap is shrinking. But it's the odds of playing it. Like, if it was all just even odds, if you're like, hey, for $1 million, guess the winner of the NFC East, and if you get it right, I'll give you $1 million. There's no way in hell I would pick Washington or the Giants if that was the bet. But if you bet Washington or Giants Washington, either 1-2 or in a full 1-2-3-4 that I know you can bet on DraftKings because I've done it. The odds are so great, it's worth just throwing a couple of bucks on to see if it pops, because the gap between those two teams, Dallas and Philly, are coming down. Washington and the Giants are rising up. It would just take, if you thought, Philly's a step ahead. Philly's got the worst defense in that division. So they've got a Achilles heel to their team. And I think they finished the season last year, including the playoffs. Were they 1-6 to finish the season last year? That's not a great team. Jason Kelsey's gone. That's a huge loss. I don't think Nick Sirianni's a great coach, and he's in trouble. Saquon Barkley is not the answer. More Georgia defenders were never the answer. The Eagles could have a really rough season this year. I could see Philadelphia being in that 8-9 win range. I mean, just look at the way that they finished last year. They didn't get a whole lot better this season with their offseason moves and their draft. So the Eagles are coming down. Dallas is confusing. They lose Dan Quinn off. The defense was carrying them. They lose Dan Quinn. Mike Zimmer has a track record, but Mike Zimmer's track record is when he first takes over defenses, it's not well. You got to transition. You got his kind of players and all that. They lost Stephon Gilmore. I think is a bigger loss than they would let on. The offensive line is mediocre. The running back situation is not going to scare anybody. They got CeeDee Lamb and not good wide receivers after that. Brandon Cooks is getting towards the end of his career. Dallas is not great. They have a ton of talent. I can see Dallas winning that division quite easily. For me, it's almost anybody but Philly right now is what I see. But I can see Philadelphia winning it because Jalen Hurts is so good. He could carry that team. But the odds to play Washington and the Giants are terrific. So that's why I'm throwing a couple of bucks on them. Okay, coming down to Tom Finn, 2018. Oops. Where did I lose? I went too fast on my scroll. Hold 'em or fold 'em from Tom Finn, 2018. Chris Brooks, Emmanuel Wilson, Ty Johnson, Dante Miller, Jarrett Patterson, Sion Vaki, Cordell Patterson need to cut 4 or 5. I'll just hit all of them real quick. Chris Brooks is and it is good and promising, but in a terrible situation because he's got 3 running backs way ahead of him. So when is Chris Brooks ever going to get touches on that team? Emmanuel Wilson is a must-hold. Emmanuel Wilson is a star in the future if they will ever let him be. Ty Johnson, even if I think Ty Johnson's got a chance to be the number 2 early in the season, and I think James Cook has a shaky hold on being the lead running back. But whether Ty Johnson splits with James Cook or James Cook goes down and they push Ty Johnson in as the starter, when did the Buffalo Bills lead running backs ever do that much for fantasy? Like, James Cook had like 1 or 2 great games last year, and then he pretty much watches Josh Allen rush for all of the touchdowns, and they don't throw it to him a ton. They started to throw it to him a little bit more with the new offensive coordinator, but he's having a problem with drops in the passing game. So I don't look at any of the Buffalo situations. At a certain point, deep down on rosters, Ty Johnson has my interest, like when you get way down in the weeds with like the Dante Millers and the Jarrett Pattersons and Cordell Pattersons. But he's no sure thing. Dante Miller looks great in the preseason, but he's not going to be above Singletary or Tyrone Tracy. he's a home run hitter. He may have a moment or two. Jarrett Patterson is up against Vidal, and I don't know that he's going to win that. And what does it matter if he's the number 3? I mean, I guess if Dobbins gets hurt, Jarrett Patterson could find his way into that split. So there's a little bit of a pulse with Jarrett Patterson that there's not with some of the other guys. Vaki is solid, but Craig Reynolds is going to be ahead. If something happens to Gibbs, it's going to be Craig Reynolds and probably some Vaki. But I don't see a path towards Vaki ever becoming for this year becoming a star. In the future, I mean, Montgomery's still going to be there. Gibbs is going to be there long term. I mean, Vaki may be 2 years from now working with Gibbs if Montgomery moves on, but I don't see star running back with Vaki. He's capable. Cordell Patterson, I don't want anything to do if you're a Pittsburgh Steeler, so that's my gut feelings on those. Chris Frazier, do you have a golden 10 or 12 for this year like you had in the past? Yep, we have the Holy 7-11. It's in the draft guide area, and it was written right as the preseason was getting ready to start, or written sometime in July, and I may be updating that of who's in and who's out on the Holy 7-11. There's 7 holy players and 11 hopeful holy players. So look at that. Look for that in the draft guide area in July. I believe that was written. RC, can you do a mock from the number 5 pick, full PPR 6 points? I think I've done a mock from like 4 recently, but I will note number 5 full PPR. And the 6 points, do you mean quarterback touchdowns? That's always important. That's a game changer if it's 6 points for a quarterback touchdown. 6 in PPR, or 5 in PPR. So I'll note it for the next time I'm getting ready to do the mocks, which will be after I process all of this week's games, which I've got 6 more reports to go. I've watched 2 of them. I just got to report them out. 4 I have not seen as of yet. Steve Rowley, sadly I'm holding Deontay. I tried to warn you a couple years ago, Steve. 12 teams, start 3 wide receivers. So I mean, there's some lot. I mean, the guy that was going to be is going to be the number 1 for Carolina, so that's something. Need to trade for another wide receiver. Who would be good targets? Assume Deontay's okay for this purpose. Reported he went back to practicing after today's scare. So that's good. If Deontay, you wait for Deontay for sure to be back at practice so that nobody's worried about, he's got some secret hangover from the injury that was reported. And then you go in. I'm going to just look at wide receivers in his range. So, I mean, people are still into Deontay Johnson, and it's, a trade lesson within this is, if you're going to try to trade Deontay Johnson, and you're in, let's say, a 10-team Dynasty league. So there's 9 other owners. There's probably 5 owners who think Deontay Johnson is bad or just don't care about him. But there's probably 4 who think, this is the number 1 wide receiver for Carolina. Dave Canales told us that nicely, told the entire league that his pass game would be based on Deontay Johnson. And Bryce Young's certainly going to be a star, a bounce-back candidate. I mean, just look at all the fantasy articles that have Bryce Young as a bounce-back candidate. So when Bryce Young really comes into his own and Deontay's his number 1, this is going to be great. So there's 4 owners in your league who think that. There's 5 owners who don't care. I'm just using a 10-team league scenario. you're just going to have to find the 4 that are interested in Deontay. Just because you decide, hey, I'm going to go trade Deontay, and you make an offer and they laugh it off, that does not set the market for Deontay Johnson. It's like, oh, nobody's interested in him. Don't offer him around like a prostitute. Don't fling him out there. Don't put him on the trade block. Don't text people and say, I'm trading Deontay Johnson. What do you give me for him? Don't be savvy about it. Get into conversations about a player on their team or a position group, not a player, just like a position group. Like, hey, I'm looking for running back depth. Interested in discussing a trade, maybe for running back or tight end or quarterback, whatever you make up to say. And if they're like, yeah, I'll listen to that. And if it's a team that has room for a wide receiver, or seems to have a need for a wide receiver, you can put something like, hey, what about this for like a Deontay Johnson? Just don't go out with a lead punch and say Deontay Johnson's for sale. Then everybody's gonna panic. So let people think that they're stealing Deontay from you because you're panicked about your quarterback depth or your running back depth or whatever. But in his ADP range, supposedly, you got all the older wide receivers like Amari Cooper, Terry McLaurin, Godwin, and I'm not saying old. I'm just saying not new, fresh names. Calvin Ridley, Hollywood Brown, Keenan Allen. I'm not interested in Keenan Allen. I'd rather have DeAndre Hopkins than Deontay Johnson. You could probably make that trade and then some in an instant if you're talking Dynasty. You might be able to swap. I can't believe that Deontay Johnson and Amari Cooper have about the same ADP range from what I'm looking at. But I would rather have Amari Cooper times a million than Deontay Johnson. So you can get something for Deontay Johnson, just be kind of stealth about it. The veteran wide receivers in his ADP range are all really, if you could get Amari Cooper, you get DeAndre Hopkins, you get a Cooper Kupp, whoever's panicking because that wide receiver is old, and that's who I would target for Deontay Johnson, is one of these 2 old wide receivers that are going to have a great year, but everybody in Dynasty panics, and I assume we're talking Dynasty. Everybody wants to Dynasty or panic trade off their older players. So Deontay to me is a 0. So if I can get a legit Hopkins, a legit Kupp, Amari, even if I got to add a little something to it, I'm doing that all day long. Schultz, love Ty Johnson. I'm a fan. I think there's an opportunity there, but Ray Davis looked better in his second opportunity. They drafted him knowing that they had Ty Johnson on the roster. So I think Ty Johnson may be better for the NFL than he is going to be for fantasy. But if James Cook goes down, like on Labor Day at a Labor Day party, and he's not going to be there for week 1, or he's not going to be there for the season, Buffalo is probably going to first turn to a Ty Johnson Ray Davis split, and Ty Johnson has experience that Ray Davis doesn't. So Ty Johnson to me is the handcuff right early, just like Justice Hill is the handcuff for Derrick Henry early. But about 5-6 weeks into the season, it might be Ray Davis in Buffalo, and it might be Keaton Mitchell in Baltimore. Mark Ziniel, if I'm pronouncing that right. Hello, RC. What are your thoughts on Zamir White? Talked about that earlier. I think he's in a perfect situation for fantasy production because his coach adores him. He wants to run the ball. He wants to power run the ball for his offense. Zamir White is the power runner on that team. He proved that late last year and Zamir White is actually pretty decent in the passing game. He didn't work it much in college, and that was a knock against him, was like, oh, he doesn't offer much in the passing game. Go look at his 4 starts at the end of last year, especially the final 2. He was involved in the passing game, and I watched all of those and did a big report on Zamir White. So I would point you to, if you want more in-depth information on Zamir White, this summer I wrote a detailed scouting report and article on scouting all Zamir White's 4 starts last year and how he did, what he looked like, and how that translates to this year. But in general, my thoughts are positive on Zamir White. Steve Rowley, when you update your rankings, will Rashad, what running backs will he move below, if any, for Dynasty for redraft? He's probably going to move from that top 3 to 5 range that he has been in for 2 years to outside the top 5, but within the top 10. Gibbs will probably be ahead of him. Pacheco. Trying to think of who else is in that range. He'll probably be in the range of Breece Hall, who's under attack in a different way from Braylon Allen. So I mean, he's still going to be an RB1. I'm just saying he's still a little bit undervalued because he is the best back there. He could put them all in his rearview mirror because he's so good. But they are going to try to take him down, and if we rank him as an RB1, top 8, top 10, RB1, and he's trading right now, his ADP is number 12, 13, 14, depending on the platform. He's kind of fully priced now, so my only question is now the time? Is there more risk, and should we explore if you can get a major haul for him? Because again, go back to the 10-team league. There's going to be 5 owners who are scared to death of Rashad White because of all the Bucky Irving stuff. There's going to be 4 who adore Rashad. You want to deal with the ones that adore him, and do they have something where you're like, man, if I could get these 2 things or this one thing in exchange for Rashad White, then it's another great return on investment from Rashad White that you got that thing that you got for him. So Rashad doesn't have to produce in your lineup to give you a return on investment if you can turn him into something great. And I'm not saying you panic sell him. My message is I'm not against exploring trades of him. I'm no longer urgently acquiring him like last year when he was such an incredible value. He's about fully valued now with risk that the team is trying to replace him. They probably won't be able to because he's just better than the other guys, but I don't like it. I don't like a situation where the team is actively trying to replace that running back. Like, you look at Zamir White as just an example because we're just talking about him. Antonio Pierce loves Zamir White. He's going to give all of the touches to Zamir White. That's why I love Zamir White. Rashad White's coaches are actively trying to get Bucky Irving over Rashad. It may not work. They tried with Sean Tucker and Chase Edmonds and that guy that's on Tampa Bay for 100 years, never did anything, Keyshawn Vaughn. So they tried and failed, but they're trying again. They didn't draft Bucky Irving like, oh, this would be a good return guy that can complement Rashad White. All they do is talk about how much better Bucky Irving runs the ball than the guys in the past. The guys in the past is only one guy last year that touched the ball. So I'm getting itchy about them constantly trying to take down Rashad. And if they take him down, if they give Bucky, 7 carries a game and bring Rashad down to 11 or 12, but still give him the passing game work, then he's still an RB1 range guy, but that's what he's trading for now. The big, huge upside value that we got last year is not there this year because they're trying to take him down. The Falcons aren't trying to take down Bijan Robinson. The Chiefs aren't trying to take down Isaiah Pacheco. They only say nice things. They only build offenses around him. Rashad White, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen the coach, the head coach, running back coach, and offensive coordinator have not said one positive thing about Rashad White this entire year. But they're on record 10 times over about how great Bucky Irving is. What a great draft pick that was. How much they loved him, and they were all in agreement that they were going to draft Bucky Irving. That wasn't because he was going to be in the return game. So Rashad can take him down. I think Bucky's going to falter, but they're going to try like heck to make sure that it doesn't. But if it was just Rashad versus Bucky, that's one thing. But Sean Tucker's actually the talent back there to worry about. So if they can't take him down with Bucky, they might try to take him down with Tucker, and they would probably be right to, because Tucker's really good. They should turn that into a duo backfield. Every backfield should be a duo backfield. Save McCaffrey and Derrick Henry. So I just think there's so much risk coming at Rashad being a clear-cut top RB1. He's still going to be an RB1, I think. He's still going to be useful, but it's not the excitement. It's not the wow, the upside of Rashad White because of the coaches. Sam Shen, how do we feel about McConkey and Gus Edwards after Herbert returned this week? Feel great. I thought it was something to watch to see what was going on. The longer that it dragged on with Herbert, the more you had to start to worry about those guys, because if no Herbert, for this year, I don't want McConkey and I don't want Gus Edwards if Justin Herbert's not there. Long term, Justin Herbert's going to be there, so McConkey's dynasty-wise is fine. But just for 2024, I don't want in on McConkey and Edwards if Herbert's not at quarterback, because look at what they got outside of Herbert. So, but Herbert's back. Herbert makes everything better. Makes Gus Edwards a threat to be an RB1 in non-PPR. Makes McConkey a threat to be a wide receiver 1 in PPR. So, I feel good. You knew that I would. Tom Finn, 2018. First and second round rookie, Dynasty rookie draft player values are tanking fast this year. Yep. I mean, there's only a couple guys that I'm interested in, and the rest of them, the bloom is coming off the rose fast, but that happens every year. The collective fantasy society, we get so hyped about these rookies are going to be such magical unicorns, and then you look and you go, I'm watching Keon Coleman, I don't get it. Like, yeah, he looks like he's good. He looks like he's going to be a player. But really, I mean, this is the excitement. Like, where's Ricky Pearsall at? Like, is he a mirage? Is he a real player? Haven't even seen him. Jonathon Brooks, hadn't even seen him. This first round's just got a couple of players, and most of the situations I want to trade. There's only 1 or 2 or 3 guys that I'm really would want to hold in to get an opportunity to get my hands on, but for the most part, I'd rather have a real player, go after a real player than draft the magical future. Tom Finn responding to the Johnson Cook thing. Keep matriculating 6 points, PPR, Superflex, and when anyone puts in 6 points and keep matriculating's been with us for a long time, so I know he means that as touchdown passes. So, but when I see 6 points, I'm just going to assume you're telling me that it's the touchdown passes 6 points, which changes the situation. So anybody new, if you're asking a question and you're putting the league parameters in, I need to know that quarterback scoring if it involves a quarterback in the question, because the difference between 4-point generic scoring and 6 points touchdown passes with 300-yard bonuses and all that stuff totally changes the valuations of the quarterbacks. And then certainly Superflex does as well. So you got it all here. 6 points, PPR, Superflex, Dynasty. First, for the last wide receiver spot, how would you rank Khalif Raymond, Josh Reynolds, Tim Patrick as a dart throw for 2024? Today, I would say, based on what I just saw, recency bias, Bo Nix and Tim Patrick looked way more in sync than I thought. Josh Reynolds didn't play. So I was writing up the report, and I just assumed, I thought I had heard that he was, minor banged up, and so when I didn't see him have any targets, even though Denver ran the first team for a couple of series, I just assumed Josh Reynolds didn't play. Then I was trying to find a picture to capture for the report, and one of the pictures I was looking at, it was Josh Reynolds out there celebrating Tim Patrick's touchdown. All the guys on the field coming together to celebrate the touchdown. I'm like, oh, I guess Josh Reynolds did play in this game. That's how important he was to Bo Nix. Is I didn't even know he was playing. So Tim Patrick over Josh Reynolds based on what I just saw, and then I would say probably Tim Patrick over Khalif Raymond. Although I'm going to post something, I think tomorrow or the next day. I clipped it and put it aside to put into the RC notes, but I'll give you the inside now, since you're nice enough to join the live stream. They asked Dan Campbell, what's up with Khalif Raymond? Is he the number 3 wide receiver? Why isn't anybody talking about him? And Dan Campbell said they don't want to play Khalif Raymond 65 snaps a game because they value him in the return game so much. They like him better as a 25 snap a game guy. So when I heard that, I'm like, ooh, that's not good for Khalif Raymond. Then the next sentence out of his mouth was, but we're waiting for somebody to step up and be a helper for that number 3 role. So right now, Khalif Raymond is our clear number 3, and if he has to play all the snaps, then he's going to play all the snaps. So right now, Khalif Raymond is going to play a lot of snaps as the number 3 for what we know the rosters today, but they don't want to. It's another situation where the coaching staff is saying, we don't want to do this with this player. So I don't really want to dive into that too hard when Tim Patrick looks like he's listed as the starting slot wide receiver, and then he had the most catches and targets from Bo Nix this past week. So I'll take Tim Patrick for the gamble for the win. Oops, I sped up this. Keep matriculating. Second, considering my roster includes Rachaad White, would you rather have one of those wide receivers or Sean Tucker? Please rank the wide receivers in the previous question. I'd rather have Tim Patrick, or I'd rather have Sean Tucker if I had Rachaad White. Unless you were like so super desperate for wide receivers, you needed to have one. If this is just last roster spot, hoping to hit on something, it's probably wiser, given those 3 wide receivers are probably not gonna be amazing or anybody you're going to count on major for fantasy. I would get Tucker because when it comes down right now, this time of season, now and for the next couple weeks, if you're between should I get a handcuff or should I get this flyer wide receiver, if you're even debating it, go with the running back, because I guarantee you within the next couple weeks, we got another week of games, and then the couple weeks of practices, some starting running back is going to tear their ACL between now and September 5th, 6th, whenever the season starts. And if it happens to be Rashad 3 days before the season's going to start, or 3 days before the very first game, the Thursday night game, that doesn't even involve them, then Tampa Bay's going to be scrambling, and they're going to use the guys that they're going to be probably thankful to the gods they prayed to for it to happen. And then they'll go Bucky and Tucker, and I will take Tucker to emerge from that eventually. So if you have him as an option, because I'm sure Bucky Irvin's not just sitting out there available, I would take Tucker if I had Rachaad White, just to be safe. That what if something happens to Rashad between now and September 7th, 8th, whenever the season starts for them. Silent Warrior, how confident are you in Anthony Richardson this year? Very. Notice Stroud and Hurts are pretty much even or higher than him now in the rankings. Depends if we're talking 6 points or Dynasty or redraft. So I feel confident. I mean, he's right up there with those guys. In 6 points, Stroud may be a nudge ahead. They've kind of gone back and forth as I've changed the schedule strength, as I see teams and change the defensive capabilities. Those guys change. They're not changing on their own per se. They change more, a little bit based on me changing the defensive capabilities of their opponents. So they seem to kind of be running together about the same. So I have Richardson right up there with. I don't think there's a clear-cut answer of Richardson, Stroud, or Hurts. They're all. You'd be happy to have any one of them. In 4 points, I'm more for Richardson and Hurts. In 6 points, I may be more on the Stroud bandwagon by a nudge, but Richardson and Hurts would be right there with them too, because of the running. Tom Finn 2018, love the talent with Richardson, but injury risk scares me. There's injury risk on any of those guys. Richardson has not been injury prone. Just because he got hurt last year doesn't mean anything. If that's the case, then you don't want Christian McCaffrey because he was injury prone a couple years ago. So Richardson obviously has been cleared from his injury. He doesn't show any ill effects from what I've seen. So I say there's no obvious injury risk, except for, yes, he's a running quarterback that takes more hits. So there is that, but he's also built like a linebacker. So I would bet that Jaden Daniels gets hurt before Richardson or Jalen Hurts, given their frames. So I'm really not afraid of Richardson's injury prospects any more than I'm afraid of everybody's injury prospects. Living in Jacksonville, we got a lot of Colts games, which I watch as a JT owner. Saw Richardson take a lot of wicked hits, and that'll change with more experience, especially him getting his shoulder whacked and then losing a season because of it. I assume he's gonna learn a lesson that be more judicious on his running, be more judicious on getting down. But he's still going to run, and he's built bigger than any running back you have in the league. So he's going to take hits, but I'd be more afraid of getting hit by him than him taking hits. Sam Champ feels like Levis will be ignored in most 12 teams leagues, which is a plus. He's ignored in about every league, which is a good thing. Silent Warrior, here's a parlay on DraftKings I just did for plus 38,000. 25 to play 10 grand. All season wins. Panthers under, Steelers under 5. That's going to be tough. Not impossible, for sure. But somehow Tomlin always finds a way. Jags under 6. Yep. Raiders under. Bears under. I love all of that except the Steelers, but I'm sure the Steelers part of it really drives that. But that's an interesting play for sure. Lay on under wins. I have to note that down and take a look at some of that myself. Schultz, P. Ryan to Dallas has to be a foregone conclusion. I don't think so. I don't think P. Ryan is going to be in demand by the teams that need a runner. P. Ryan's going to be in demand for a team that needs a pass protector. And Dallas's best pass protector is Ezekiel Elliott, which is another reason why I'm so high on him, because I don't think he comes off the field much at all. So I don't think it'll be P. Ryan to Dallas. It'll be P. Ryan to somewhere, but I don't think it's going to be P. Ryan to Dallas. Not impossible, but I'm gonna guess P. Ryan either goes back to Cincinnati, or P. Ryan I could see more going to Kansas City to be Mahomes' protector, to take over the role that Jerick McKinnon have, as my number one bet. But your guess is as good as mine. Silent Warrior, if you modify that parlay to Steals under 7.5, it's still plus 22,000. Okay, I'll definitely be looking at that, because those are all my favorite unders, with the exception of the Steelers, and only the Steelers because I'm never right. Every time I try to bet them to have a bad season, Tomlin finds a way to curse the quarterbacks in his division to all get hurt, and he somehow scuffles his way to 9 wins. Sam Shen, do you think Sam Darnold will be replaced during the season? I will say no, because the Vikings don't have anybody to replace him with. The only thing worse than Sam Darnold is Nick Mullins. The only thing worse than Nick Mullins is Jared Hall. So, I mean, maybe so bad they tried Nick Mullins, but I'd say that Sam Darnold's going to get a very long leash. Sam Shen, bench quarterback, 6 points for passing touchdowns. So that matters. Let me scoot back up to your question. This was about filling a bench spot with a quarterback. When the quarterback scoring is hot, and 6 points heats it up, but it's PPR, so it's only heated up to a certain point, then it's plausible. It doesn't have to, but I would just say this, and it's 12 teams, so a lot of good quarterbacks will be gone, but there'll be a lot of good quarterbacks probably still on waivers. If one of your limited bench spots, if you get a great quarterback, whether that be Purdy, Herbert, Levis, whoever we want to talk about there, has a viable number 2, not only does it protect, quarterback's important because of 6 points touchdown. Not only does it protect whoever your starting quarterback is early on, but if your number 1 quarterback is fine, but your number 2 quarterback is a breakout star, that's going to have trade value to go get a running back or a wide receiver. So, generically, you don't have to get a quarterback in that situation in a generic sense, but targeted, if there's certain guys that we think can be top 5 quarterbacks in fantasy that are still out there, like a Purdy, like a Herbert, like a Will Levis, then it's worth sticking them on the roster just to see if they, if Levis comes out week 1 and goes bonkers on the Bears, then he all of a sudden he's gonna have a ton of value. If Herbert comes out and has a great week 1, people are gonna go, oh, this whole Jim Harbaugh is gonna run the ball to death and Herbert's not gonna have a great season. That narrative's gonna fly out the window. And then if you want to trade one of them, then that scenario, another quarterback may be way more valuable than taking Josh Downs and sticking him on your bench, when limited rosters means there's going to be plenty of running backs and wide receivers and tight ends to pick from too. So I'd let it be player based. If there's a great quarterback, go get it, because it'll have value in different ways. Mike Paul, I'm torn with George Pickens. I believe he has the talent to be a top wide receiver. discouraged by his situation, time to sell, or wait until he's a big game, who to target and trade. No, the time to sell is now, because if he has a one catch for 17 yards game opening week and the Steelers look terrible, then you're never going to be able to sell Pickens. So I think there's more risk that he's going to have a terrible opening act, and then everybody's going to be so down on the Steelers, you're going to lose value. Right now, everybody's Justin Fields is going to take over, and George Pickens is going to do, he's their top guy. There's still hope with George Pickens, but I'm looking at that situation going, I don't see a lot of hope there. And just look at what Arthur Smith did to Drake London last year. Sam Shen, since he's mentioned in the other article, do you see Brandon Aubrey as a holy player this season? He's about darn well going to be one. The amount of volume that he's going to be allowed to get, because Mike McCarthy's so tickled by him kicking 60-yard field goals, as am I when he's on my fantasy team. I mean, you could see Brandon Aubrey do one of those things kind of like the Cowboys defense did last year, where all of a sudden, the Dallas Cowboys defense, I think through the first couple weeks of the season, was like an RB1 in scoring. So you could see Brandon Aubrey, depending on your scoring system, if it favors more points for distance of the kick of the made field goal, you could see Aubrey as like scoring like an RB1 at kicker for a stretch of time. By the end of the season, it'll level out, I'm sure, but Aubrey's gonna be such a difference maker at kicker. And when you traditionally take a kicker, you can take that difference maker, or you can take some flyer sixth wide receiver or running back. You hope two guys get hurt above him so he gets into the game and has a useful opportunity, or you could take a kicker that you just plug in every week and he's scoring double digits and you don't realize it, but you turn around and look and you're on a 5-game win streak and you don't really give the full credit to the kicker. That happened to a lot of us last year that got Aubrey early on when this was emerging and we were starting to push it. People jumped onto Aubrey and had a hell of a run. Part of the hell of a run most teams were associated with last year was the hidden value of Aubrey. Brody Johnson, is there any betting opportunities to consider as a result of goal line carries, i.e. betting Kamara under touchdowns as Taysom may take goal line carries? There is betting opportunities for that. I've looked at it and don't love it. Don't love a lot of the things that I see, because even Kamara's number, I don't know it I'm not looking at it, but I would guess that Kamara's number is probably 5.5, and it's just not. And the odds are probably minus 110 or plus 100. There's not enough to get me excited, so I don't see it as a juicy opportunity. We're talking about way other juicier opportunities. I'd rather bet against the Panthers on various things. I'd rather bet on the Tennessee Titans on things than to try to guess touchdown count unders for running backs. But there's opportunity. It doesn't look that great compared to a lot of the other betting opportunities that are out there. Alex Palumbo, I know you're low on Puka, but with the injury plus Kupp seemingly healthy, shouldn't Kupp then be a top 12 wide receiver? Possibly, but I think that Puka and Kupp will split each other into both being wide receiver 2s, which makes them valuable, but Puka's trading as a strong wide receiver 1, so that's why I'm low on Puka. I like Puka on his own merits, but I'm not paying top 10 wide receiver money in a draft or whatever. to have him when I know Cup is going to at least be dragging off of him or equal to him or surpassing him. So, but the same goes for Cup. Like, I don't think Cup races to the wide receiver one because Puka's there. Puka doesn't race to wide receiver one because Cup is there. And then if Puka happens to be out, then they put in Whittington, and he may be better than Puka. So I just think all those guys on the Rams, those top two guys, have too much risk of the surrounding situation to really be considered strong wide receiver one candidates. They're strong wide receiver two candidates. And they'll have wide receiver 1 weeks. They could get out of the gates hot, but by the time the season plays out, those two guys are going to end up cutting into each other. They have to. They were at the end of last season, and Cup wasn't really that great when he was back, but it cut into Puka enough to bring him down. So if Cup does even better, if he's now fully healthy, it's going to have an effect on Puka. And now Whittington's going to have an effect on Puka, which I didn't even think that was going to be. I thought Demarcus Robinson would be a little bit of a guy in contention for targets, but now Whittington's coming on like a storm. Colin McKenna, what's up, RC? Excited for another season? Hope you're doing well. Appreciate that. Glad to see you are back. And then obviously Sam was recommended over from Colin, so I very much appreciate that. And oh boy, all the gang is coming back. Jules McCoy, the High Priestess, is here, noting that Stroud, A-Rich, Daniels, and Nix all with Week 14 buys. Just FYI. Yeah, that will be quite a thing. And I'll just say, I'm not freaked out by all of those talented players if I happen to have 2 of them, or even 3 of them for that matter, all with the same buy in Week 14 for a couple of reasons. One, like if it's redraft and you only play 1 quarterback but you have Stroud Richardson, or if it's a keeper league and somehow you got Stroud Richardson, or you drafted Richardson in the 5th and then you jumped out and you took Jaden Daniels, let's say in the 10th, so you wind up with this super strong 1-2 punch, or you get Nix with Stroud or with Richardson, whatever combination it works out to be. By the time you get to Week 14, so many things will have happened. You might be able to trade one of those quarterbacks, especially because you're getting towards the end of the season. You might need to trade one of the power quarterbacks if you had held on to them for that entire time in redraft. You trade one of them before your trade deadline to get a needed wide receiver or a needed tight end or whatever it is that you're having a problem with. They're an asset to trade before Week 14. Or if you make it all the way there and you still got both of those quarterbacks, there's going to be some other quarterback we'll be looking at in Week 11 or 12 to kind of get in on early for that Week 14 bump. Or you trade, just pulling one as an example, you trade Stroud for an equal type quarterback who doesn't have a Week 14 bye, just to mitigate the situation. That's so far down the line, and so much is going to happen between now and then. When I can get that talent at a discount, I'll take it, and then I'll figure out what to do by Week 14. If they were all had the same bye in like Week 5, then that would be a freak out. Silent Warrior, I think Kupp is a top wide receiver this season if he stays healthy. Possible, but I just don't think we're going to see the days of Kupp getting every target like what used to make him the number 1, not top 5, the number 1. I don't think those days exist anymore now that Puka's there and now that Whittington's there. Sam Shin, hey McKenna, thank you for bringing me here. I thank you as well, Mr. McKenna. It all traces back to Silent Warrior. Awesome. Johnny D, 2 questions. I have the first overall pick in this draft PPR. Do I go with Christian McCaffrey, Hill, or Hill Lamb? I'm with McCaffrey. He's so unquestionable at the top. I don't care that I mean, I'd rather go wide receiver because I know what the running backs to come in the next round or two. But when you're picking first, a lot of those running backs might not be there at come pick 24 if we're talking 12 team. So just McCaffrey's just too money to pass up. So, and all those wide receivers are awesome too, but if they're all going to stay healthy, your McCaffrey's going to outscore them all. So I go McCaffrey. And second, what to do with Devontae Adams? He's worth a flyer at this point. By the time you get to 20, if you get the turn, if that's pick 20 or 24, depending if it's 10 or 12 teams, just as a guess. I mean, Adams is on the board, but man, that move to Minshew is not great. So I still like Adams, but I don't have to have Adams. I'm maybe as interested in DeAndre Hopkins when we're talking about older wide receivers, and then especially when DeAndre Hopkins is going for like an 8th or 9th round pick or so because he's out of sight, out of mind, and old. Like on the Titans, DeAndre Hopkins as the number 1 wide receiver, he may score twice the touchdowns Devontae Adams does because of the quarterback situation and the offensive situation. So Adams is up for consideration, but he is losing my faith fast with the Minshew situation. But the Minshew situation may only last a week or a half or 2 weeks before they think they go to O'Connell. It's not like O'Connell comes in as the savior, but I think O'Connell's better than Minshew. But when Minshew's in, he's going to throw everything to Devontae Adams. So Devontae Adams is not dead. I just want touchdown. I want touchdown count to go with it if I'm drafting up that high. But I don't know that Adams is going to get it. But there's not many other alternatives that you can say are that much better. Maybe Amari Cooper. I don't know that in the context of all of these things, when you start getting into Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper range of wide receivers, like in that, Amari's going for a much better value, like 4th round, 3rd, 4th, 5th round. I'm watching the Kansas City game today, and I'm watching Rashee Rice, and I'm like, how's he not going to be a wide receiver 1 in Kansas City, and if he's not getting suspended? So Adams is on the board, but man, I hope there's something else better. I mean, once you go CMC at the top, and you miss out on those big obvious wide receivers in the first round, then it's a wide open world of wide receivers that you might wait until. I mean, your 3rd round pick's going to come up right after your 2nd, but there's going to be wide receivers in a cluster rounds 3, 4, and 5, like Amari Cooper and Devontae Adams, if you want to throw Rashee Rice in there. There's a lot of guys that are going to be in that realm. Adams is probably the best of all of them just because he's the best wide receiver, but I hate that situation isn't going to spring him. So yeah, worth a flyer, but I'm hoping that there's better. But at that standpoint, like if you take CMC and you come up to either pick 20 or 24, whatever your next pick is, and if Derrick Henry's there, I'm taking Derrick Henry. I'll get wide receivers down the line. I'm not going to bypass a power running back, power scoring, not style, but I mean somebody I know has got RB1 ability. So if I come out of it with McCaffrey, Henry, and then I'm looking for wide receivers after that, I can go Amari, Rashee Rice, McConkey, DeAndre Hopkins. You'll get your wide receivers after you miss that first power group at the top. It's not a. There's just a big cluster of wide receiver 2 potentials after that, all littered through the next 5, 6, 7 rounds. Silent Warrior, yeah, I found RC digging in the depths of Reddit. I love Reddit for a non-groupthink fantasy guru. Loved his rankings. First year was when he called out Mahomes, and I've never finished worse than Sixth Sense. The Sixth Sense, Patrick Mahomes. Well, and you're probably your worst year with Patrick Mahomes was last year. Silent Warrior. Some guy replied, and I knew it was gold. Yeah, I don't get a lot of referrals, so I appreciate that. The beauty and my great appreciation is everybody being a silent warrior and not wanting to tell anybody. It's a blessing and a curse. It's not the way businesses are supposed to work. You're supposed to tell a friend and get all these referrals if you're have a good product that people would be interested in. But we obviously play in a we play a game for money and pride, so it works the opposite way. So I totally get that. So I do appreciate it when somebody lets the cat out of the bag to somebody they're not going to have to compete with. Ross Jacobs is here. The way you know RC is good is because nobody talks about him. They don't want the info getting out. There's truth to that, and then there's the opposite. I get a lot of when I meet some people or talk to some people for the first time, or encounter somebody, and they're like, "Who are like? I've never heard of you. How could you be good at this when I've never heard of you?" There's a lot of that, like. So there's an opposite effect, but I will just say this: when my words, writings, and all of that reach the right people, you've come home. You've found your home. So that's what I love about FFM is I know it's not for everybody. We got a lot of people that stumble across the website or see something on YouTube or whatever, and the first reaction of most people is, who is this guy? And then when I say that Caleb Williams isn't good, or if I question Bryce Young, I get a whole bunch of hate on social media and all that, which is fine because I don't ever look at it, so I don't know what's going on. But there's a lot of he can't possibly know what he's talking about, and then the first thing they encounter with me is me saying Rashad White is better than Bijan Robinson, and then they're like, well, now I know why I never heard of him, because this guy's the worst, and he's just saying this for clicks. Like, I wish I could say stuff and get clicks. When I say stuff like that, I get the opposite of clicks. I get people who ban the web, they go into their Google and like put a not interested, don't push this content to me from this person because they're nuts. Colin McKenna, LOL, I feel that. I told my fiance she's not allowed to say RC's not out, RC's name and not outside the house, disclosing edges. Ross Jacob Godwin. Oh, that's in response to the Ross is big on Godwin. What was it? It was Godwin versus. Now you gotta make me look it back and see if I can figure it out in all this chat. What's the Godwin question? Godwin or who? In some mocks, Godwin in the face of wide receivers that you can take in the middle rounds. Yeah, he's, especially in PPR, is legit. Silent Warrior, in some mocks have been faced with taking either McConkey or Hopkins. Which one do you prefer? Ooh, that's a tough one, because I love them both. I love the values of both. The way I've been playing it lately is I'll always take McConkey, because Hopkins is falling so far because he's old, hurt, out of sight, out of mind, and everybody hates Tennessee and Will Levis because he's so terrible. I'll take McConkey, banking on that I'm going to get Hopkins in the very next round. And if I don't, then that made my decision for me. If I try to do the reverse, if I take Hopkins around the range where both of those are available, there's no way, almost no way, McConkey's available on the next pick. But if I take McConkey first, I'm almost guaranteed right now that Hopkins will be there next. Boyd Xander, Red Game Reviews discussing Javonte. Would you trade him in a 12-team, 26-spot half PPR dynasty? Yes, I would. Thinking of getting Dynasty Rookie Draft second. Currently rostering Pacheco, White, Spears, Miller, Wilson, and Javonte. I don't know who do you think you're gonna. I'm just thinking through this. Who do you think you're gonna get with a second round pick that's gonna be more impactful than trading Javonte for an existing player that you might need? I don't know who that player might be, but we just happen to be talking about Hopkins and McConkey. I would rather have if it was position neutral, and obviously Pacheco and White are your starters. Spears is fine, but as you're currently rostered in that deep of a league, I would keep Javonte because you know how running backs go down. So I want to be 4 strong, especially in a deep roster situation. So I would be inclined to keep Javonte, but I would also move him, but I would move him to try to get another running back that makes sense. And here's the trade that I would love for you. And I'm not going to look to see if the ADPs make sense, but I think it will. And even if you have to add to the deal to get it done, I think you specifically should. You should trade Javonte for Tony Pollard. If you could do it straight up, I'd have to look at the ADPs to see if that's the right value. But in my head, that seems like they're about in the same ADP range. The reason that you would want Pollard ahead of Javonte is obvious. You have Spears. Spears and Pollard, to me, are going to coexist and be useful. And I'm assuming it's half PPR. That's still pretty good. I love it for PPR. I love putting Spears and Pollard together because in PPR, and it can work for half PPR, both of those guys are going to split touches in a high-functioning offense. They're going to get catches, and a lot of the work is going to go to the run. Not a lot, like it's going to be led by, but they're working on fast pace, push the passing game. But if whatever you're looking at is not there, we got you these ace running back receivers. Just check it down to them and let them do their thing, and we'll move on to the next play. So both Spears and Pollard are going to be able to be RB2s, let's say. RB2, RB3, like top 25 running backs. So is Javonte. But if you get Pollard with Spears, that'd be your 3-4. If one or the other of them gets hurt, the other one's going to be an RB1. If they don't get hurt, you've got 2 RB2s on your hands. I'd rather have that protective situation than hold on to Javonte as my number 4. I just think Javonte is going to get split to death by the rest of that backfield. And people who have Javonte are going to be that he's going to be the starter. Like on the depth chart, it's going to show Javonte is the starter, but it's going to be so miserable to watch him get carved up by McLaughlin and Estime and whoever if they keep Pirine. This is not a Javonte-led offense. And Javonte, to me, just doesn't even look like he can lead an offense anymore. He's going to be fine enough in 10 or 12 carries and a couple of targets, but McLaughlin's going to get a lot of those touches. If McLaughlin ends up working better than Javonte, and he's going to in like the passing game, you're going to rather swing it out to McLaughlin than Javonte. Javonte's going to be a guy that's a starting running back for his team, but you're going to moan and gripe about how useless he is for actual fantasy because he's getting carved up by everybody else. So I'd much rather, if you could get Pollard, the Pollard-Spears combo to me is a brilliant way to go. If you've got one or the other right now, go get the other, because one of them gets hurt. The other one is an RB1 situation in the Tennessee offense. Colin McKenna, how much do you consider keeper potential when doing a redraft? Initial season of a 5-keeper max league with 2-round penalty each subsequent. Am I right to ignore it? Yes, you're right to ignore it. You draft to win. You draft the best team to win the title, and with that will come great players that you can keep next year, or not. And you'll pick up guys. You'll pick up one or two guys, gems off the waiver wire that we're ahead of the world on. You're going to have them. They're going to be productive. You'll have them, and there'll be a 2-round penalty from like round 17. They'll be like keepers for round 15. So you'll have at least one or two of those guys, and then you'll have 3 legit other guys to keep. So I wouldn't think too much about it. I would go try to win the title. Everybody else is going to be playing for the future and scarfing up all the rookies. You go win. You go put a team together to win the title. You'll have keepers that come from it. Darren McDonald. After reading the Buffalo-Pittsburgh write-up, I watched Joe Andreessen highlights. Honestly, I thought he did. That was he definitely grabbed my attention. And please, somebody tell me that you watched that clip of that defensive tackle from the Giants chase down J.J. Taylor in the open field. That's like the greatest thing I think I've ever seen in the past year. That was amazing. But watching Joe Andreessen play middle linebacker last week, that was a delight too. I kind of caught on to that. Sometimes I watch a game and I'm trying to watch so many things in quick order. I don't have time to really go back and forth and watch several different players. So they have to do something to catch my attention. And then when they do, it's like there's some guys I can't take my eyes off of them. And this past week, Andreessen was one of them. It's like I almost can't watch this tape because of everything that's going on. I'm just staring at him, watching him move around the field. Colin McKenna's 4.5. That's probably on the touchdowns for Kamara. Boy, that's going under that. Going under that is tough because Kamara's going to get a ton of touches, but I think he's been under 4.5 rushing touchdowns for a couple of years now. So, and then minus 110 is what I figured it would be. It's not that strong of a bet. I would take whatever that money is, just take that money and put it on the Carolina win total under, or the Bears win total under. Jules McCoy, this is like my 18th with you, RC. I haven't been around that long, though it feels like it. So don't make me feel old. But yeah, she's been around since the beginning. One of the foundational members. I guess you would call that grandmothered in to the FFM family. Joe Schmo with the final question or comment for the night. Then I got to get back to work. With Ayuk probably not going to the Steelers, I've been getting Calvin Austin in the last round of best ball drafts. That's not bad, but anybody talking to me about Pittsburgh Steelers offensive anythings right now is quite offensive to me. I'm so off-put by what I saw last week with Russ and Fields and the first team not even being able to move the ball against who were they playing? Second team? Was it Buffalo that they played? It was embarrassing. So, but Calvin Austin definitely in best ball drafts, you're starting to get into round 25, 28. So that's a good play that late. But right now, I can't even get excited about the deep sleeper potential of Calvin Austin. He should be good. He should be somebody that they feature because it's such an easy throw for their crappy quarterbacks. But Arthur Smith's trying to make Van Jefferson and Scotty Miller into a thing, while Calvin Austin's just running routes to nowhere and not getting passes. So, but I'll bet Russ is going to be the starter when they get settled in. The way that he's talked about Calvin Austin this whole offseason, I think he's smart enough to know go to Calvin Austin and George Pickens. But Calvin Austin's going to be the easier throw. So, and I would not rule out Ayuk going there yet, because every other day, everybody's trying to outguess what's going to happen. So it's going to be Cleveland. No, it's New England. No, it's Pittsburgh. No, it's not Pittsburgh. Pickens is in the deal. No, he's not in the deal. The deal's dead. Now he's going to sign with San Francisco. If any of that was going to happen, I would think that if San Francisco was serious about signing him, they would have gotten it done. If Pittsburgh was serious about trading for him, they would have made an offer the 49ers can't refuse. I think it's a total game of chicken with Ayuk caught in the middle, overvaluing himself, and he's going to have to take a deal. Just my 2 cents, I think San Francisco is leaving Ayuk just dangling off a hook, and they're just letting him dangle out there in the breeze. Because the thing that Ayuk does not want to do, he does not want to play for the 49ers or anybody else on a 1 year, on the deal that he's got for this year. Because if his numbers goes down, he tears an ACL, rips an Achilles, his earning power is shot. His window of opportunity is right now, whether that's with New England, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, some other team, or San Francisco. He's going to take the best deal on the table eventually, but there's no reason for him to do that right now. There's no panic. He's got an offer from San Francisco. He's got an offer from Pittsburgh. He's got offers from the other teams. He just doesn't seem to want to play there, which I get. He's got offers on the table. He could take any of them. He could take the Pittsburgh one, or he could take the San Francisco one right now, or he could take it tomorrow, or he could take it the next day, or he could take it the next day. He wants more than what they're offering. So it's in his best interest to keep waning. Don't practice. Don't play. Don't put yourself at risk so he doesn't have to go through the grind of training camp. Just keep waning. You don't know if this upcoming week Deebo Samuel blows ACL, George Pickens blows an ACL. Something happens to where all of a sudden Ayuk's value goes higher. Ayuk's value can't go any lower than the offers that he has on the table right now. If he wants to get more, the best thing in his circumstances to do is to just wait. Why rush back? Why take it? It's not like, oh, I better hurry up and sign the San Francisco deal now before it's gone. It's going to be there. That offer that he thinks is low is going to be there today and a week from now, and he doesn't need to learn this offense or anything like that. He can step right in and he'll be fine. So worst case scenario, he can take the San Francisco deal anytime. So it's in his best interest to just keep waning and hope somebody else gets hurt or something happens to bump his trade value up. And then if he's really flustered, he agrees to the deal because he wants to leave, and he's talked himself out of it, out of San Francisco. The Pittsburgh deal will be available 3 days from now. 3 days from now, or a week from now. So I'm not thinking the Steelers are out of it. I'm not assuming anything at this point. I'm assuming all parties are trying to play chicken with each other to see if they can get the best deal, including Ayuk and his team, which all makes sense. San Francisco doesn't need him back today versus a week from now. So they don't have to rush to make a deal with Ayuk. Pittsburgh put their best deal out there. They have no reason to panic into this. They might if Pickens goes down or Pickens gets arrested or does something stupid. So waning is all in Ayuk's favor, and really the other teams as well that are in it. So we'll probably go another week with all of this speculation. Colin McKenna, RC, are you familiar with Derek Carty's back? No, it's very good, and he makes an NFL one called Blitz. You may want to check it out. I will write that down and see what it's all about. I appreciate that. Okay, we've gone on too long. The 1 hour show is now into 2 hours and 13 minutes because I'm a giver. So I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody's live attendance so much. Appreciate everybody who's going to be watching on demand, hopefully on your commute to work tomorrow or during your work day to make you get through the workday better and to contribute to the inefficiencies of the workforce by listening to our show when you're supposed to be working. So appreciate that. Got two late coming in questions that I will answer and then get us out of here before somebody else tries to put a question in and take me away from my work efficiencies. Boyd Zander, Dynasty 12 team, 26 spot, hat PPR, and 1 point for PPR for a tight end. With the 103, pick a Dunzier, Bowers, or McConkey. If I'm taking a wide receiver, it's McConkey. If I'm taking but if I'm considering the differential for a tight end, Bowers or McConkey, with the bump for the tight end, the best way I could answer it is, what do you need more? What's more pressing or what's more important? Are you hurting at tight end and Bowers could change your world? Are you great at tight end and it'd be a luxury pick, but you need wide receivers and McConkey would be better. So I would be between Bowers and McConkey. I would try to stay out of the Dunzier situation because I just don't know what's going to happen. The impact with Caleb, the 3 wide receiver situation that they have there. You might be able to get a Dunzier if you were really into Dunzier and you really wanted him. You might be able to trade for him cheaper a couple months from now if he's buried in that wide receiver trio and buried by Caleb Williams. Boyd Zander, wide receiver tight end roster is... Oh, okay. Yeah, you beat me to the punch. Ingram and Goddard. And then wide receivers, Collins down, Samuel, Perry, Shaheed, Wicks, Wilson. So a lot of hopeful talent at wide receiver, but no real aces outside of potentially Nico Collins. But I think even that's at risk with the 3 wide receiver situation there. You're good with Ingram. You got a good backup with Goddard. I would probably lean McConkey, and I think McConkey's going to score more touchdowns than anybody thinks. If you want to talk about betting touchdowns, I love the McConkey over 4.5 touchdown bet. Who else is going to score touchdowns on that team? I was telling Ross Jacobs, I can see it now. You know what they're going to do with McConkey. They're going to do that same near the goal line route. McConkey will do the same way that Cooper Kupp used to do it with Stafford. Going to line up on the right. He's going to start going left. Then he's going to wheel. He's going to do that 180 and head toward the pylon. And when McConkey spins and does that 180 to go the other direction after starting out going inside, then he does a 180 and goes to the pylon. When Kupp used to do that, he'd be open by 5 yards. The cornerback could never recover from it. McConkey will get 5 of those at least with Justin Herbert. So I don't see McConkey as just, he's going to catch a lot of passes. I think he's going to get a good share of touchdowns because who else is going to get touchdowns? It's not like if Lad McConkey was on the Texans as their number 3 wide receiver, then I'd go, hey, man, I don't know that I want McConkey in that. It's McConkey is good, but the situation is great. So Bowers is good, but the situation could be good. So I like Bowers fine, but given your roster, I might lean. You've got so many hopeful wide receivers, but not a true ace, that I would probably lean McConkey. Go Jin checking in. Just got home from the long commute. So the beauty with YouTube is you can take this right to the beginning while we're going live and catch up to us at a certain point. And then McKenna, thank you, RC, about to dig through the site tonight and cram for everything like a final. Well, there's plenty of stuff out there for you to study on, so it's going to be a long night for you. It's going to be a long night for me. I am going to go write up my notes on Lions Chiefs and Browns Vikings. One of them is going to be a video. One of them is going to be a written, I think. And then I've got 4 other games I still got to process. So that's it for me. I am out of here, but I got to see if I know how to end this stream. This is the first time for me producing my own live stream all by myself, as taught to me by my son. So I'm going to click the button now, and hopefully I am gone from this stream. Until next time, I am